All right, so you guys sent us a pretty interesting document this time around.
Yeah.
Looks like it's all about different ways to structure your workouts based on something called the Doggcrapp or DC training philosophy.
Right.
Think of this as us taking all that information and pulling out the key stuff you really need to know
Absolutely.
to make your gym time work for your real life.
That's it. That's it.
You know?
And what I think is particularly helpful about this material is that it doesn't just sort of lay out like one rigid workout plan.
Right.
It actually shows how you can adapt some of these like core training principles
Yeah.
to fit the reality of a busy schedule.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's going to resonate with a lot of people out there.
Sure. For sure.
You know, for those maybe not familiar, DC training,
Right.
it's known for its high intensity, low volume approach.
Yeah.
And a big emphasis on progressive overload.
Yep.
Which makes these like adaptable schedules particularly effective.
Okay, so let's unpack this stuff. Starting with what looks like sort of the foundational blueprint here.
Yeah.
This Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday schedule.
Yeah.
When you're following this, how are the different muscle groups typically organized across those days?
So in this original setup, you're essentially looking at 2 different workout sessions
Okay.
that you're going to cycle through.
Gotcha.
So day A typically covers your chest, shoulders, triceps, back width, and back thickness.
Okay.
And then day B
Really?
handles biceps, forearms, calves, hamstrings, and quads.
Okay, and the document really highlights the importance of that full day of rest you get.
Yes.
Between each of those workouts,
Yeah.
why is that recovery period so crucial for seeing results?
Well, that rest day is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
It's when your muscles are actually getting a chance to repair and rebuild
Right.
after the, intense demands of a DC-style workout.
Yeah.
So, this process of recovery is where you're actually seeing those improvements in
Yeah.
your strength and muscle mass.
Mm-hmm.
So a key insight here is this power of consistent, frequent stimulation coupled with, dedicated recovery for maximizing those gains.
So it's really interesting that the author specifically mentions that their best gains came from sticking to this particular schedule.
Yeah.
That definitely suggests its effectiveness, when you can prioritize that recovery.
Yeah.
And in terms of how often you're working each muscle group with this structure, what does that look like over, say, a year?
So with that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday approach, each major muscle group ends up being trained approximately 80 times per year.
Okay.
So that's a pretty significant frequency, allowing for really consistent stimulation that can really drive muscle growth over time.
Now, the document then presents a variation that's described as being for really heavy trainers.
Right.
This Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday split.
Yeah.
How does this one differ from that kind of foundational approach we talked about?
So this variation essentially compresses those training days into a slightly shorter time frame. You'd have your full workouts on Tuesday and Thursday. And then the weekend would include what it described as like half workouts on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
So obviously less rest time
Right.
between some of your sessions compared to that original plan.
Now, these half workouts on the weekend,
Yeah.
what does that typically entail?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And the document doesn't go into extreme detail about like the exact structure
Gotcha.
of those half workouts. But you could probably assume that they involve either a focus on like a smaller selection of exercises
Right.
for all the muscle groups, or perhaps hitting only certain muscle groups with a reduced volume
Okay.
compared to the full Wednesday sessions. It's likely a way to maintain some training stimulus
Right.
when a full workout isn't really feasible.
Yeah. Okay. So we've looked at a schedule with, ample built-in recovery.
Yeah.
And then a more compressed one.
Right.
But then the document gets into a schedule designed for people with what I think a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah.
Hectic, haphazard schedules.
Yeah.
This Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday approach.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So this is where things get really interesting in
Yeah.
terms of that like real world adaptability.
Okay.
The primary goal here is to make sure you're not skipping workouts altogether,
Yeah.
even when your time is like seriously limited. So the body part split also shifts a bit
Okay.
to accommodate this.
Mhm.
So day A focuses on biceps, forearms, back width, and back thickness.
Okay.
Day B then targets chest, shoulders, and triceps.
All right.
And day C works calves, hamstrings, and quads.
Okay. And the amount of time you're actually spending working out with this compressed schedule is surprisingly short.
Yeah.
Right? It mentions 25 to 45 minutes tops.
Yeah, that's it.
That sounds much more manageable when you're juggling a lot.
Yeah.
How does the training frequency hold up with these shorter, more frequent sessions?
So despite those like shorter durations
Yeah.
and the fact that you don't have that full day of rest, between each session, the frequency is actually maintained quite cleverly through this 3-week rotation.
Yeah.
Think of it like rotating through like 3 different flavors of workouts each week, ensuring you hit all those muscle groups consistently over time, even with those short sessions. So week 1, you would do workout A, then B, then C.
Right.
Next week shifts to B, then C, then A.
Okay.
And in week 3, it's C, then A, then B.
All right.
So this means that certain muscle groups are going to end up being trained twice within the same week at times.
So even with these significant time constraints, you're still providing a pretty consistent stimulus to those muscle groups. Right. The document mentions a frequency of 69 times per year.
Yeah.
With this approach, which is surprisingly close to that 80 times per year with the original schedule.
It is.
I mean, the core insight here is that even when time is incredibly limited, strategic short bursts of training can still provide a surprisingly high level of muscle stimulation.
Exactly.
Though with, important trade-offs.
Absolutely. It really underscores the idea that something is almost always better than nothing.
Right.
When it comes to training.
Totally.
However, the document does highlight some really important downsides to this more compressed schedule.
Yeah. What are your initial thoughts on the potential challenges?
Well, the most immediate thing that jumps out is the lack of that full rest day between workouts.
Right.
When you look at this compressed schedule without that full rest day, what are the immediate concerns that arise regarding the body's ability to recover?
So that lack of dedicated recovery time is definitely a primary concern.
Yeah.
Without it, you are increasing the potential for overtraining if you're not extremely careful with your exercise selection and the intensity that you're pushing, which brings us to the next crucial point the document makes, which is the need for extreme care in exercise selection and order.
Why is that so absolutely critical when you're on this kind of compressed schedule?
Well, because without that full recovery day, you need to be very mindful of how different exercises might impact each other.
Right.
And your overall recovery.
Okay.
The example given, never doing full range deadlift the day after you've done squats.
Right.
Perfectly illustrates this.
Yeah.
Both of those exercises put a significant strain on your lower back.
Yeah.
And central nervous system.
For sure.
So doing them on consecutive days
Yeah.
would drastically increase your risk of injury.
Right.
And, really hinder your body's ability to kind of bounce back.
And it also points out that doing hamstring or quad work could potentially have a negative effect on exercises that target back thickness.
Right.
Why would that be the case?
So certain leg exercises, especially those big compound movements like deadlifts, and even some heavier hamstring curls can put a considerable load on your lower back.
Right.
So if you've just really worked your hamstrings or quads intensely, your lower back might still be fatigued.
Or even a bit sore, which could then limit your ability to effectively and safely perform exercises that are meant to target the thickness of your back. You wouldn't be able to lift as much.
Gotcha.
Or maintain proper form.
So the recommendation to potentially skip stiff-legged deadlifts and maybe rotate through different leg curl variations in this compressed schedule makes a lot of sense in that context.
Right.
You're essentially trying to manage the overall stress on that posterior chain.
Absolutely.
And avoid unnecessary overlap and fatigue.
Precisely. It's all about minimizing that interference between the exercises that you're doing and ensuring you're not carrying fatigue from one workout into the next in a way that compromises your subsequent training.
Yeah.
The author even mentions that most people seem to gain a slight bit better with that full day of rest, which suggests that while this compressed schedule can be a really useful tool, when time is tight, optimal results might still lean towards prioritizing that recovery when possible.
Now, there's a really interesting PS section in this document that dives into the reasoning behind the specific body part order.
Yeah.
Why it suggests putting back and biceps before chest, shoulders, and triceps. What's the thinking there?
So the main reason for that particular order is to try and minimize any negative impact that soreness in your chest and shoulders might have on your ability to effectively train your back.
Right.
Especially when you're focusing on back width exercises.
Gotcha.
If your chest and deltoids are still feeling it from a previous workout, it can be harder to really engage your back muscles and get a good contraction.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want lingering soreness to prevent you from being able to pull properly and really work those back muscles.
Exactly.
But there's a potential trade-off mentioned in that section as well, right?
Yeah.
What happens if your lug day ends up falling right after a chest day?
So in that situation, you might find that you've got some tightness or residual soreness in your deltoids and chest.
Okay.
And that could potentially affect your ability to get into the right position for squatting.
Yeah.
You know, it could make it less comfortable to hold the bar properly across your upper back and shoulders.
Gotcha.
The solution, as the author points out, is, the importance of really thorough stretching in those chest and shoulder areas before you start your squat session.
Right.
To kind of help mitigate any discomfort or mobility issues.
So it's this constant balancing act. Optimizing one aspect of your training might require you to make adjustments in another area.
Absolutely.
This deep dive into these different DC workout schedules really highlights the level of thought that goes into designing effective training plans.
Yeah.
Even when you're dealing with significant limitations on your time.
Absolutely.
What would you say are some of the most important key takeaways for you, our listener, to really understand from all of this?
Well, I think there are several really crucial points to keep in mind. First and foremost, your own individual schedule and the amount of time you realistically have available should be the primary factor in deciding how you structure your workouts.
Right.
There isn't a single best plan that works for everyone.
Absolutely.
Second, you need to recognize that there's this fundamental trade-off between how frequently you train and how much time you allow for recovery.
Yeah.
Finding the right balance for your body and your lifestyle is key to making consistent progress without burning out or risking injury.
Absolutely. And the concept of strategically organizing your workouts.
Right.
And being really thoughtful about the exercises you choose, especially when rest is limited.
Yes.
To minimize any negative interference and lower your risk of injury is so important.
Exactly. And it's really encouraging to see that even when you're limited to very short workouts, you can still achieve a surprisingly high training frequency.
Yeah.
By being smart about how you split up your muscle groups and how often you train. That can be a real game changer for those of you with packed schedules.
Yeah.
And finally, while these general principles can guide you, remember that the best workout schedule for you is ultimately going to be highly personal. It might take some experimentation and honest self-assessment to figure out what works most effectively for your body and fits best into your life.
So to bring it all together, this deep dive into the various DC workout schedules really illustrates these different strategic ways to navigate that crucial balance between getting an effective training and dealing with the realities of our busy lives.
Absolutely.
It's all about planning with intention and staying aware of what your body needs in terms of recovery.
This raises a really interesting question for you to consider.
Yes.
Thinking about all these different approaches that we've discussed today and the various trade-offs involved. What is one small adjustment, however minor, that you might consider making to your own activity schedule to better align with your fitness goals and the constraints of your daily routine?
And as we saw in the source material we explored today, for anyone interested in checking out another resource that was mentioned, you can find True Protein at www.rciptrueprotein.com. And the discount code SHB747 was provided in that document.
Awesome.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure.